Hi, this is Kat with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make the Carrier Bead Peyote Bracelet Kits by Beadaholique. Now you can of course get all of these kits and even more kits by heading over to beadaholique.com, and you'll also be able to purchase the tools that I'm going to use that may not come with your kit today. But let me show you what you're going to get when you purchase one of these kits. So you will be able to choose one of the 5 colors that we have here, and in your kit you'll receive the Tinos Parpuka beads, the Swarovski pearls, the 2-hole carrier beads, your coordinated colors of 11-aught Miyuki seed beads. You'll have your beading wire, 2 crimp tubes, 2 crimp covers, a clasp. You'll also receive some E6000 glue, some fire line, and your beading needles. Now what you won't receive are some of the tools over here. So what we recommend for this is we recommend having a bead stopper, a pair of scissors, a pair of chain nose pliers, a pair of flush cutters, and a pair of crimping pliers. And also we're going to be utilizing a couple of toothpicks here. You can also use a little scrap of wire. That's going to help us with that glue. So the tools are not included, but you will get all of this here to complete your kit. Now, another thing that you'll get is you'll get these beautiful color coordinated patterns. And let me just bring these in here just so you guys can see them. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be following our little patterns here. And as you can see, I have 8. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, how to use the pattern as we make our kit. But we have all of these in the color coordinated patterns that you can receive, whichever one is your favorite. So let's talk about some of those colors. All right, so up here, we have the Santa Fe Retreat, we have the Spring Blossom, we have the Glam Metallics, we have Lavender Fields, and the one I'm going to be doing here today is going to be Poseidon's Treasure. So if you've chosen your kit and you have it in front of you and have all of your supplies and tools, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I want to start by, again, showing you the pattern here. So as you can see, we have 8 different patterns here, but in my example, as you can see, I only have 6 of those carrier beads. So what you can do is you can choose your 6 favorites. Now we've given you up to 8 because we wanted to give you the opportunity to make a larger bracelet. So for example, if you're going to do 6 beads, like I have in my example here, it's going to measure out 7 inches flat. But when you put it together, because those beads are nice and thick, it's going to actually be a 6.25 round bracelet. So let's say you wanted to add 7 beads, it's going to be just under 8 inches flat, but that will give you a 7-inch around bracelet. And if you want to do all 8 beads, it will give you approximately 8.75 inches to 9 inches or so flat, but that will give you an 8-inch round bracelet. Now, if you need it a little bit larger, or if you need it somewhere in between, I'm going to talk about how to resize some of that as we get closer to stringing those all together. But the first technique I want to show you is how to do even count peyote. All right, so I'm going to kind of set this up here so I can be following along, but I'm going to be using my 3 color of my seed beads there. So first, let's take one of our beading needles, and you'll get 4 here. So in case you should snap a needle, you have plenty of extras. Go ahead and set that aside. All right, so I have my beading needle, and then we're going to take some of our fire line here. So go ahead and just remove that little guide, and we're going to pull off. I would say, you can use a little bit extra, but I'm going to use about a yard. I think you'll have plenty there. And just go ahead and snip that off with my scissors. There we go. And set that aside. All right, so onto my fire line here. I'm going to string and thread my beading needle. There we go. All right, so now I've pulled it down so I have a little bit of a tail on one side, and then I have my longer side on the end. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to use a stopper bead. So I'm just going to use one of my colors here. I'm going to go ahead and pick up one of my little teal beads. I'm going to actually kind of get them out of the pile here. You'll notice that you have plenty of seed beads. All right, so just string on one bead, and we're going to pull that all the way down until we have maybe a tail of 6 to 8 inches or so. And now I'm just going to take my needle and just go back through that single seed bead there. And what that's going to do is that's going to create a little loop so that it's sort of caught on my thread there, so my beads won't slide off as I'm stringing them. All right, so I'm going to follow one of the basic patterns here. So let me bring your eyes back up here. So you're always going to start at the top corner and work your way down. So you're going to be picking up your beads. Now for even count peyote, you're going to actually pick up the first 2 rows, and these top 3 beads here, that's considered 1 row. So when I talk about 2 rows, we're actually going to be picking up 1 copper, 2 copper, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 blue. All right, so let's go ahead and pick that up on our needles. So you just kind of jig jog and go across the entire top there. And this is going to be 6 beads wide. These are going to be really tiny and delicate. So for this pattern, I have 2 of those copper and then 4 of those blue. So now I can go ahead and string those all the way down. So now when I want to pick up the next bead, I'm coming out of this blue bead here, and I'm going to come around and pick up the one that's right beneath it there, okay? And then we're going to kind of skip over, and I'm going to add my beads for that row only. So for this pattern, I'm going to pick up 1 teal bead. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually skip over that first blue bead there, and I'm going to go into the second one. And what that's going to do is that's going to create a little T. Let me string it down, and then I'll kind of get my fingers out of the way for you. All right, so you see how I kind of came around, and as I'm going through that little teal bead and then through that next blue bead. So the next one I want to pick up is a blue. So I'm going to pick up a blue. I'm going to skip over that first blue, and I'm going to go into that next blue there, the one right next to that copper one. And I'm going to slide that down, just like so. So you can see that they're starting to sit together like little bricks. All right, and now I'm going to pick up 1 more, following my pattern of the blue, and I'm going to skip over that first copper bead, and I'm going to go into that next copper bead there. And just keeping everybody in order there. And I'm just going to take my thumb there and just kind of scooch everything together nice and tight. All right, so now I'm coming out of that copper bead, and I'm going to get the bead that goes just below it, and just following my pattern, I'll start to move a little bit faster now. So I'm going to pick up a blue bead and skip over and go into that next bead there. So what we're creating is, again, those little bricks that are sort of jig-jogging back and forth. All right, so I've just added a blue. Now I'm going to add another blue. And you can see that I don't need to think about skipping over anymore because it's just very natural that I'll go into that next up bead, or sometimes people call this the down bead. And then I'm going to pick up a teal and go into that teal. And again, we're going to do that same thing where we're going to turn our work around. And now I'm going to pick up a teal and go into that teal. So now you're just going back and forth with your beads, following your pattern, and we're creating that first strip there. All right, so I'm going to continue and weave this entire piece, but what I want to show you here is it's unlike any other peyote where you'll just sort of stop once you've reached your destination. What we've done for this particular pattern is you'll want to weave the entire thing so that it will come together at the end, and I'm going to show you how to zip that up. So let me finish getting that far, and then I'll show you how to zip up your peyote. All right, so I have my first strip of peyote here, and I followed my pattern exactly. So I have my needle coming out this side, but before we start with our zip up, what I want to do is I want to move to the beginning side here, and I'm just going to slide that little stopper bead right off my work there. So I don't have that stopper bead anymore. And next, I'm just going to thread another needle. This is where that pack of 4 really comes in handy. I'm just going to slide that onto my thread. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie off this side. So I'm going to go around and go down through a bead or so, just kind of tighten that up and come up through another little bead there. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through the top bead there because I like to be near the top when I do this. And I'm just going to take my needle, I'm going to go behind my work there, and all I want to do is I just want to catch a little thread bridge back there. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to make a nice little knot and then just weave my thread down through the next bead. So I have a nice little knot, so I can remove that needle on that side. Come in with my scissors. You can also use a thread zap or snips for this as well. And I just want to get as close as I can with my scissors. All right, so now we have a nice clean edge on that side. So I'm going to kind of rotate my work around like this. So what we're going to be doing is basically we're going to be folding that over the top of a carrier bead and kind of creating a little loop, just like so. So it'll kind of sit right on top of that carrier bead. But before we even start working with these guys, I want to show you how to do that zip up. So let me show you kind of from the top here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go up and over to the other side here and catch that first bead. And the reason we call this a zip up is you're kind of going back and forth between the little teeth that appear in that thread. Now let me see if I can kind of get my finger in there so you can see a little side version. So I went up and over, so now I got to go back over to this side and go through this bead here, but only that bead. Let me make sure my needle goes through. There we go. So I'm just kind of crisscrossing so you can see it just sort of go back and forth, and you can bring them close together as you start to do your little zip there. So to the other side, go through that next bead, and to the other side, go through that next bead, and all the way down to the bottom. So I'm going to start to pull mine together a little bit because I want them to be nice and snug. So you can just see how the pattern just comes together there. Now for some of our patterns, they don't close up as nicely, so there's a little bit of a pattern in the gap. So I'll talk to you about that in just a second as we start to put all of our stuff together, because you're going to want to treat them as a little bit of a front and a back. All right, so now I'm coming out the bottom there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to do that same thing I did on kind of the other side there, is I'm just going to loop around and go up through the bead on the other side because I want to connect those last two little beads there. And then I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to go through a couple of beads and then tie them off. And just go down through, catch a little thread bridge there, come up through, and there we go. Pull a nice little knot there and give it a little tug. Make sure everybody's secure. And I'm just going to go through that next bead just to really get that knot hidden in there. All right, and then I can come in with my scissors, and again, trying to get as close as you can, and just cut that off. There we go. All right, so now I have my little peyote ring, and this is going to slip over my carrier bead. But what I want to do first is I want to create all the patterns and all the rings that I want before I move on to that next step there of adding the glue and the carrier beads. So go ahead, and again, here's your 8 options for patterns. We've given you enough seed beads that if you wanted to do 2 of the stripes or 2 of these stripes, or however you want to mix and match, you don't have to do 1 of each. You'll have plenty of beads to do so. So go ahead and finish making your little rings, and then I'll show you how to attach your carrier beads. All right, so now we are ready to attach our little strips here to our carrier beads. So to do that, we're going to be using some E6000, so you'll get a nice little tube of glue here. So all we need to do is we're just going to remove that, and it's going to be sealed there at the top, but just go ahead and puncture it with the other side of our little bead cap there. All right. So now what I want to do, and I'm just going to kind of use the back of my little thing here just to catch any of those little drips. What I want to do is I'm going to use this one as an example because it doesn't line up fully, so I'm going to show you kind of how to get it on there. So I'm just going to use a little bit of glue, and you don't need a lot. This is just really to secure it from just kind of wiggling around too much. So you can see I'm just barely using any. So, So when we look at our carrier bead, I'm going to look at the top there, and I'm going to put it sort of towards one edge. And just like I said, just a little bit of enough. We don't want too much there. And I'm going to put it on one side, and then carefully kind of flip that over in my fingers and try to get it on the other side as well, on the same side. So they're both sort of on the top there. Now if you get a little glue on your fingers, don't worry, it'll rub right off. There we go. All right, so now we're going to take our little loop here and I'm going to slide it over that side of the carrier bead. And what it's going to do is it's going to kind of push that glue down. So you're going to get it on all sides there. And then you can see that I have the little misalignment there of the pattern. So what I want to do is I'm just going to kind of roll it around a little bit just to get a little bit more of that glue happening. But I want to make sure that that pattern mismatch is in the center so that I can use this as the back of the bead and I can use then this as the front. So for some of them it doesn't matter, but for some of the other ones it does, so just go ahead and be aware. All right, so go ahead and glue all of your beads and then we will start our stringing process. All right, so you can kind of see that we're ready to string it up. So I wanted to kind of deconstruct it all here. And this is also what I recommend you do, because what you can do is make sure that all of your beads are facing the right way. Also, if once you've kind of laid it out and you want to maybe, let's say, like swap out these ones and be like, you know what, I think I like that better. You know, you can just kind of do that visually here and then you're all set to go. All right, so what we have here, and I'm just going to kind of walk you through it as I string, but we have the pearls, we have some seed beads, and we have our Tinos Parpuka, and then we kind of just alternate through our bracelet there. Now, here is what it looks like when it's all together and finished. So you remember how I was going to talk to you a little bit more about the sizing. So if you didn't want to add that sort of extra inch, inch and a half by adding another bead, because you're adding a whole big unit there, which is about adding an extra inch, give or take, what you can do is if you have 6 beads, you're going to have extra pearls and extra seed beads, of course. So what you can do is you can add a little extra pearl. You can do, you know, we're going to do 2 seed beads on each strand. You can do an extra one. You can also do more of the Tinos. So you have that opportunity to lengthen it a little bit further without adding extra beads. So just think about that as you're working. And in order to give you the opportunity to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to be using our bead stopper. But let me go ahead and uncoil my beading wire here. And it's going to come in one full length strand. So what I recommend you doing is just putting those 2 ends together, finding the midpoint down there at the bottom. And we're just going to take our flush cutters and just snip that in 2. So we have 2 equal lengths there. Oops, I kind of knocked everything about, didn't I? All right, there we go. Yeah, everybody out of the way. Okay, so now this is why I recommend using a bead stopper, because we're going to be able to see that length and then we can remove the bead stopper without starting with our clasp. So go ahead and put that maybe about 2 inches or so from the bottom. You're going to have plenty of length, as you can see. But now we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring both of our strands together. Excuse me, a little extra glue on my finger. There we go. Bring both of our strands together, and now we're going to fit them up through one of those pearls. And now just slide that down. And because it's going to be a little tight, this is the only bead that we're going to do both strands through, so you might need to just kind of work it through for just a minute. There we go. All right, so we're going to slide that all the way down here. And now we can go ahead and separate our 2 strands. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of bring it over here so I can just sort of pick them up at the same time. So I'm going to pick up 2 seed beads, 2 seed beads, and now keeping them separated, I'm going to pick up my little Tinos bead and I'm going to go through the smaller side and slide that down, just like so. So we have our nice little tip there at the very end. All right, so now just make sure that they stay to the right and the left here. So I can pick up one of these little pearls, slide that down, pick up the other little pearl, and now the carrier bead is really just a big 2-hole bead. So go through one side, and I'm going to go through the second side. And go ahead and slide that down. And now I'm going to pick up the pearl, slide it down, pick up this pearl, And now my little Tinos there, I'm actually going to pick up both of them at the same time. Hopefully I can get them both on my wire here. If you can't, just go slow. It's totally fine. Pick up this guy and slide that down. And I'm going to come through with my second wire and get that second one. All right. So you can see that I'm kind of going to just keep stringing along here. So now I'm just going to pick up pearls, carrier, pearls, the Tinos, pearls, carrier, and continue all the way to the other side. So I'm going to do that really quick, and then I'll meet you back there and we're going to finish this guy off. All right, so I've strung up my bracelet here, so you can see that I'm coming out. Again, I have that same pearl on the end. So again, before you finish, go ahead and see if you want to add any length using another pearl, another seed bead, however you want to finish it off. But I'm going to go ahead and string on to this very end one of my crimp covers. Now these are, one of my crimp tubes. Now these are little tubes, and we're just going to slide that all the way down there towards the end. And it's just going to sit right on top of our pearl. And then both of these strands, again, we're going to kind of treat them as one. They're going to go up through the little loop on our clasp here. Now this is a magnetic clasp, so it'll probably get very friendly with your tools there, but go ahead and just sort of keep them together. All right, so we're coming up through that little loop there, and now we're going to take these and go back down through our crimp tube. Everyone's going to get nice and snug in there. And just go ahead and pull that down through. And we want our crimp tube to be as close as we can get it right to our little pearl there. So you can see I'm just kind of pulling one strand at a time, and I just want to work it down there so that it's nice and close, but that our clasp can still move around just a little bit. All right, so now I have my tube, my clasp, and my wires. So what we're going to do is we're going to crimp that crimp tube, and we're going to use our crimping pliers. So you can see when I put them together just like so, there's a little kidney bean shape there on the inside, and then a little bit more of an oval round shape. So we're going to first use that little kidney shape. So go ahead and set your little crimp tube inside there on that first notch towards the center of those pliers, and just give it a little squeeze. And that's going to create a little kidney. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of rotate it so it's facing upwards. And now I'm going to set that little upwards kidney into that first, see what I mean about the tools? Into that first little notch. And this is going to just sort of squeeze again, and it's going to fold it over together. All right, so now we can just come in with our flush cutters and trim off our little wire ends there. There we go. And now to give it a nice clean finish, we're going to use a crimp cover. So we can come in with our chain nose pliers, kind of set our little crimp cover inside just like so. And now we're going to come over our little cover there. And I just want to make sure he is going to sit nicely there. Oh, there we go. All right, so you see how it's just sort of like coming around that little crimp cover. So don't worry that it's going to be silver. You're going to not see that anyway. So now just take your little pliers there and just give them a little squeeze. Sorry, I'm being pulled towards my magnetic clasp there. So just take your time and just give it a nice little squeeze there. And you can just bring that down because we want it to look like a nice metal bead. There we go. So it has a little seam on one side, but it's nice and finished on the other. All right, so now I'm going to move to the first side that I started stringing. I'm just going to remove my bead stopper, and I'm just going to repeat that entire process. So that's how you make the Carrier Bead Peyote Bracelet Kits from Beadaholique. And these are so wonderful. It combines stringing with bead weaving, so it'll really stretch your imagination and, really allow you to make a wonderful piece of jewelry that is truly one of a kind. And it wears so nicely with that lovely magnetic clasp. So go ahead and choose your favorite color, or choose more than one if you love this design, by heading over to beadaholique.com, subscribe to our YouTube channel, And be sure to check out more exclusive Beadaholique kits only at beadaholique.com.